welcome. It's good to see and be around many of you. It's been a long time for some of you since we've had a chance to see each other. These are very unusual circumstances to me, but here we are. So we will, I'm here to talk tonight about our presentation for returning to school. This is consistent with a lot of the plans and language and letters and presentations that you've had a chance to view on our district website over the last weeks. But I do want to talk a little bit about what school should look like this fall here at Preston. And I also want to talk to you a little bit about some choices that you have as parents and families as you think about what the future holds in your house. All right. I'm going to give you a little bit of a disclaimer that we've talked about administratively quite a bit here at Wayne Highlands over the last couple of months, and that is we've never done this before. We've never opened schools in the middle of a pandemic. We've never talked about what it looks like to offer our families options other than good old-fashioned school. So we're confident with where we are right now, but we also recognize that where we are right now seems to sometimes change on a daily, weekly, periodic basis. So as I go through this tonight, please know that I'm confident in this plan. I'm very confident in it. But I also need to hold out that if there's changes based on anything that's given to us by the state, then we have to consider those in relation to what I say tonight. All right. So Mr. Scott Miller is our moderator. He's controlling my slides, so I'm going to ask him to go ahead a slide, and we'll get started. On our district website, the full plan that I'm going to be referring to is available. You can look at that at any time. That was the plan that was approved by our Board of Education last Monday evening, and it was presented by Mr. Frigoletto to the board and to the public. That plan is publicly available. Included on that website, the district website, there's some links to our timeline for this plan, including some results from the survey that was given out in June. And there is a very good and worth watching video from Wayne Memorial Hospital. Some of their experts and their healthcare leaders that have worked very closely through this whole pandemic. If you have not watched that, I encourage you to. It's about 12 minutes, but it's worth your time to understand a lot about the science of what we're dealing with. There's some things that I'm going to say throughout this presentation and that we're going to talk about that are related to mitigation. Mitigation being that term that we've heard a lot about. Mitigation being the term that means what we can do to reduce the spread of the coronavirus. Those mitigation musts are three very important things, and they have to do with three basics that we've all heard a lot about, and that's social and physical distance with the recommended amount of 6 feet. And again, in the science, Dr. McVeigh from the Wayne Memorial Hospital, in the video that I just referenced, he talks about how that distance is based on the idea that when we speak, or when we breathe, our respiratory droplets, which is what carries this virus most strongly, has a chance to reach the ground or reach a surface within that 6 feet in most circumstances. Obviously, if we cough or if we sneeze, then maybe we add air to that and we push it further. Or if we whisper or just breathing, then maybe it's shorter. But that 6 feet is designed around that idea that we've come to understand. Regarding the use of masks as a mitigation technique, that is based on that idea that when we cannot be 6 feet apart, a mask is the thing that protects our respiratory droplets from traveling to another person and that person's from traveling to us. So that's the purpose of the mask in that as a mitigation technique. Hand washing and sanitizing, and Dr. McVeigh talks in that video carefully about how 20 seconds is the amount of time that it takes for that soap to interact with that virus on the hand or anything on your hand to emulsify, to cling to the soap, and then to be able to be washed away. So those three things are the main pillars of our health and safety plan, building around those ideas. You can go ahead a slide, Scott. You've seen this slide if you've looked at any of the plans or at the district website to this point. We're going to talk here about 3 different options that you have for our school, for Wayne Highlands students. The first option is traditional learning, coming to school every day, all day. That's what I'm developing a plan for. I'm developing a plan for the students who attend this building. It's based on health and safety protocols, based on the mitigation techniques that we just talked about. In that, we maintain our in-person connection with our teachers, we attend school, transportation and lunch is available, and we have all the benefits of our normal, excellent Preston and Wayne Highlands education. Option 2, and we're going to go into these a little bit more, but this is the slide that's been publicly available. Option 2 is what we're going to call Wayne Highlands Live, learning in a virtual environment. This is where our students, much like they did in the spring, would remain home using the Google Classroom format with some augmentation from where we were in the spring, okay? And then our third option to remain a Wayne Highlands student is our virtual campus. And I will talk a little bit more about that as we go. Mr. Chris Roos, I'll introduce him a little bit more later, but he has also joined us tonight as our liaison through the school district for Wayne Highlands. Go ahead a slide, please, if you would, Mr. Miller. So option 1. So here at school, if you are attending at Preston, if your child is attending at Preston, here's what you can expect. You can expect, we will need to expect that there will be a before school routine, a symptom screen at home. All right, I have another slide a little later that'll talk about what that entails. Masks on all district transportation will be required. That is not a negotiable. Bus driver will not let you on a bus without a mask on. Our buses are going to be able to seat 2 to a seat, 44 students. That's maintaining that minimal distance of 3 feet apart with masks. That's an important distinction. But they will not let your child on if they do not have a mask. And if they take it off over the course of the trip to school, well, then you and I have to have a conversation as parents, because that's not going to be an acceptable approach in order to maintain that mitigation. Upon entry at school, they'll have to maintain with a mask on as well. We'll have some gathering areas that will be designed to somewhere between 3 and 6 feet apart, where they will stay with their mask on for a time until we've gathered and we can get them out to where they need to be. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You can expect to see sanitation stations around the school, whether that's hand sanitizer in hands-free dispensers. Our teachers will spend a lot of time on hand washing routines. Our entire staff will. And there will be opportunities to reinforce that throughout the day. Hand washing is going to be a must. I'm grateful that I can say to you tonight that in all of our classrooms here at Preston, I can seat our current student body 6 feet apart in their classrooms. What that means is during instructional time, during class time, teachers will be able to say there's mask up time when the teacher's circulating the room or if somebody needs to get up and go somewhere, and there's mask down time. So there's a very good chance that your child will be able to sit throughout large portions of their day with a mask down, okay? And I value that as much as you do, okay? I'm thankful that I can say that given our current size and our current classroom sizes. That's good. Lunch, right now, I'm working on some different scenarios for either the cafeteria or classrooms. I don't have a final answer on where lunches will occur yet. Some of that will depend on how many students end up coming to school and how many choose other options. But I can tell you that we are working on a plan. I'm working on a plan to be able to offer as much as I can and where it normally would occur, okay? Packing lunch will be fine. Absolutely, that'll be fine. I don't want you to worry about things like that. Playground usage. I'm going to tell a quick story, quick aside. We were camping the last week or two, my family, and we were at a state park, and they had a playground, and they had signage up that the playground was available for kids to use. And the expectation was that you'll have a mask on while you use it, that you'll wash your hands or sanitize before you use it, and that when you're done, you'll wash your hands and sanitize before you return to your next area. So we're going to be able to have some measure of recess. And I'm hopeful that, provided the guidance that I have remains true, that we can use parts of the playground. And we'll have that routine in place of washing before, have to have a mask on, and washing after. Now, if your child does not want to use the playground, does not want to have that mask on, the people who are working outside with recess will certainly be able to have many other activities that involve staying far enough apart that that mask can be pulled down and they can enjoy being outside without it, okay? But I want you to be confident that we'll have both options available for our kids. We're not going to be using our lockers. They just don't sit far enough apart. So we're going to be reducing a lot of the items that I want kids traveling to and from school with, okay? As much as possible, I've asked that our teachers will use homework through online resources that can be done at home. I know that for some kids at home, that doesn't always work because of a bad internet connection or whatever it is. As we come across those situations, we'll have some paper copies of things available. That's not a big deal, okay? But I want to reduce the number of items that are coming to and from school, okay? You know, what they bring in a backpack is what they'll have, and that'll be what travels back and forth. During the school day, we're going to reduce transitions. What that means is, for students in K through 3, they will be in their classrooms pretty much like normal all day. The opportunities to leave the room will be for maybe to go to the gym for their gym class, but most of their special area teachers will come to them. I'm still working on a lunch decision, but they will pretty much be self-contained in that group. Grades 4 and 5, we're doing a little bit of a different schedule where they will spend a whole day with their ELA and their ELA program with that teacher. And then the next day, the math and science and social studies teacher will come and spend that day with them in that classroom. And the teachers will go to the opposite room rather than make a change in the middle of the day. Okay, that reduces the number of times that there would be transfer of materials and things like that. For grades 6, 7, and 8, I'm working on a block schedule that would involve only a few, as maybe only 3 large instructional times in the day, with a couple of class changes with breaks in between so that we can wipe down areas before the next group comes in. I'm still working on that final schedule. And again, some of that will depend on decisions that are made in the parent survey. But I'm glad to say that we'll be able to have kids move a little bit during the day to different settings so that our teachers can deliver their instruction where they are most comfortable doing it. Science lessons in the science room, if you will. Okay. The benefits to option 1 are pretty clear. The benefits are you're in school every day. I think that can't be outweighed in a lot of ways for what it provides: access to our services, access to our counselors, our nurses, everything that we have. You know, the potential drawbacks, let's be very honest. We're living in a pandemic induced or involved society. So there is an inherent risk of being out. I don't need to tell you what that is. You've heard all about it for the last series of months. But I can say that if we're good about our mitigation strategies, and if we're good about what we're doing, then we hope to keep that risk at a minimum. Okay? Scott, could you go forward a slide, please? This screener tool, which you will see again, I'll probably be sending it home as we get closer to school starting. This is the screener tool that I'll be asking for our families to use on a daily basis, okay, before somebody were to get on a bus or a vehicle or come to school. At the very bottom, and I know the print is a little small depending on what you're looking at or what device you're using, if you have 1 or more of the symptoms in group A, which is the list on the left, keep your child at home. If you have 2 or more of the symptoms on the right, group B, keep your child at home. Okay? And that's just a good screener that's easy enough that we can then work from. Okay? I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but you see what the group A symptoms are: a fever of 100.4 or higher, cough, shortness of breath, or difficulty breathing. And under group B, It's the sore throat, runny nose, chills, new lack of smell or taste. In other words, something that has developed newly, muscle pain, nausea, vomiting, headache, and diarrhea. Now, we don't know for sure with COVID-19 which symptoms occur with which person. So some of these are more prevalent, some of these are are more rare in terms of different cases. But I will tell you, this is a screener tool. No, we will not be taking temperature checks at the door. Okay, there's a couple reasons for that. The primary reason is that it's not always reliable. If a kid's been sitting on a hot bus with a coat wrapped around them, they may come in with a fever that's much more, or a temperature that's much, much higher than what it actually should be. So that would not be an accurate read. No, we will not have our bus drivers giving temperature checks at bus stops for the primary reason that it's not safe. If there's 10 kids getting on a bus and there's traffic all around, and no, mask on. This is the responsibility of you as a family before you send your child. Okay, you can go forward a slide, please. Now, related to health and safety, our nurse will maintain close contact, as Mrs. Holbert always does, with our students who have vulnerable medical needs, things like asthma, diabetes, these kind of things. Like I mentioned earlier, there will be resources around the school for hand sanitizer, disinfecting surfaces, and ample opportunities to wash hands. We will have heavy cleaning protocols during the day and overnight. We've added such things as foggers, which are things that our custodians will be able to use from room to room that will settle over surfaces, and then, you know, they'll do their magic. So the next morning things are clean and ready to go. Our water fountains will not be turned on. Students will be asked to bring their own water bottles if they choose. There will be a lot of training and signage and different things around the building to mark 6-foot distances, to mark flow of traffic. We will be talking a lot in our classrooms about mask up, mask down. When is the time for that? When it's not. There will be ample mask breaks when 6 feet is not possible. But like I said, I'm happy to say right now, we can keep everybody apart to the point where that won't have to necessarily be separate from the normal flow of class time. If there's a positive COVID-19 test, all right, this is a big question, and one that I'm sure a lot of people have thought about. There's a lot of CDC guidance. There's a lot of things available about what quarantining looks like, when it has to happen. I can tell you that if we have someone who is symptomatic of COVID-19, we're going to be talking with the family about recommending you go see your your physician, personal care provider. We are not decision makers here at school about who has to quarantine, when they might have to quarantine, or anything like that. We are making available to healthcare providers, if they need it, access to lists of people that a person who tests positive might have been around. Okay, so if someone comes up positive in a classroom and we have to think about who that child or that person, that adult, was around for a certain length of time within 6 feet, or had an incident where they were near somebody that coughed, well, then we have to provide that information. Then we have to work with the healthcare providers to who would then do their own, you've probably heard the term contact tracing. Okay. If we fall into circumstances where we have many positive tests, then we talk about groups of quarantine. We talk about shutting buildings down for extended periods of time. But this is all going to be case by case, folks. This is not something that I have a blanket rule, and there's not something that I can tell you this is exactly what will happen every time something happens. Okay, that would be unfair to each individual situation. I'm going to reiterate throughout the entire fall as we get going that panic won't be our friend. Okay, we'll have to kind of think through these situations carefully, and we'll make the best decision and the right decision as we can. Okay, you can go forward a slide, Mr. Miller. That brings us to option 2, and that's Wayne Highlands Live, and live streaming in virtual education, or live streaming interactive virtual education. This is where the crossover to what all of our students experienced in the spring is. You might choose, because of reasons that are your own, and there are many reasons, and there's many reasons for those reasons, why you might choose option 2. This option would be at home, with online Google Classroom, access to the same teachers in the same format that we did in the spring, with the exception that our teachers will be recording lessons live for your student to be able to log in at the particular class time and watch, or to be able to watch later asynchronously. Okay, so if a person were to choose this option and was at a daycare setting, grandparents somewhere during the day where there's not good internet service and they can't watch it until the evening, that's fine. Our teachers will be archiving lessons and putting assignments up on Google Classroom, and the expectation is that students will need to access that and keep pace with the learning. This does not require an enrollment change. In other words, you are still a Preston student. You're still in, the homeroom teacher of the grade where you are. There is a survey that will be coming over the next series of days that you will be able to select option 2 if that's what you choose. That choice will last for the whole first marking period. In other words, we don't want someone to say, well, I'm staying home this week and I'm coming to school next week, and then I'm staying home and I'm coming to school. That's not going to work. Okay, so your choice will govern your first 45 days of school, unless there's a real circumstance where we need to change that, in which case you call me and we talk about it. Okay, now let's kind of think through what we just talked about regarding things like quarantine or exposure to things related to COVID-19. If you are an option 1 student and suddenly you're told, boy, you're going to have to stay home for the next 14 days, you now can access everything through option 2. All of our option 1 students, all of our students will be enrolled in their Google Classrooms. And so if for some reason someone has to stay home for a couple weeks, or a group has to stay home for a couple weeks, they then become option 2 students. Okay? When we think about whether or not this is a good option for people, we need to think about things like medical reasons. Some people may have reasons related to the child themselves or people at home, that this kind of option might be the best setting for them while this whole pandemic is still playing out. Okay. I want you to be cautious about this option if your student struggles to access their education on their own. Okay, the main reason I say that is primarily for younger students in kindergarten, and first grade, and second grade. This is an option that requires some self-starter ability, some ability to stay focused, some ability to navigate through things. You really do need a good internet connection and a device. If you have a good internet connection but not a device, and this is still the best option for you, then you call me and we talk about it and we see if we can get you a device to help make this work. Okay. We probably are not going to be successful if we're talking about paper packets and being an option 2 student. That probably doesn't work as well because you can't access the instruction that you might need to access. However, there will be materials for you at home. All the school materials that you would have as a student here in the classroom, you'll have at home, your workbooks, your various things. Okay. So that's something to think about. I think there's benefits. I think there's drawbacks. You can probably think through what some of those are in each category. But that is option 2 in a nutshell. All right, if you'd go forward a slide, please. Option 3 is our virtual campus. Now, the Wayne Highlands Virtual Campus was set up this past year. And this is a partnership with VLN, the Virtual Learning Network. You remain a Wayne Highlands student in this dynamic, but you are not with our teachers. I'm still your principal, Mr. Diefenbach. I'm pointing that way because his office is back there. Is still your counselor. And, we still interact with you, but you're not our student physically, okay? You become a student through a VLN program, which is an online setting where you have separate teachers altogether. It's a standards aligned curriculum. It's not our curriculum. So in other words, if you're option 1 or option 2, you're working along the way with our students and our teachers. If you're option 3, the transition to and from is likely a lot more cumbersome and a lot more difficult. It does require separate enrollment. So if you think that you may be interested in option 3, Wayne Highlands Virtual Campus, I'd encourage you to call me at the school office or contact Mr. Christopher Roos through his email address there. If this is something, as I've already stated, some of the benefits and some of the drawbacks. You are still our student, but you're kind of away from us to the point where you really need to be a self-starter and a self-motivated learner to be able to make it through successfully. All right, you can go forward a slide, please. Now, I've talked for a little while. I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. I'd like you to keep in mind that if you have a question, I'd like it to be something that's beneficial for the group. If you have a more personal circumstance, I want you to be mindful that I'd rather you call me tomorrow or anytime this week and talk it through with me directly. I'm very happy to talk with anybody about these circumstances, and I don't take this decision lightly on your part. There's a lot to think about in a lot of circumstances. I am the father of an incoming 9th, 6th, and 3rd grader. And in each of my cases at home, my kids have said, I want to go to school. I'll wear a mask, fine. So that's been easy for me. I've said, good, put your mask on, wash your hands, go to school, right? Make good decisions while you're there. That's been easy in that setting. But I know not every circumstance is as easy. So, you know, when I open this up for questions, I want you to be mindful that that we all have our own spot that we're coming from. But with that, I'll open it up. So if anybody has a question, what we'll do is unmute yourself by clicking in your little box and choosing unmute, or at the bottom of your screen, you can select unmute where that little microphone is, and you can ask. And if 2 people are talking over each other, I hope we'll do our best to moderate it. There's also a chat function that you can type in a question, and we'll answer it that way. I have a meeting at 7 o'clock with the parents at Damascus, so we have a half an hour of time, and anything we don't get to tonight, we can certainly talk about over the next few days. So with that, I leave it open to anybody who has a question.
I have 2 questions if nobody else is going to start. Mr. Jaggers, my name is Becky Sissons.
Hi, Becky.
Hi. My question is, if we do choose option 2, would there be a tablet made available to us if possible?
Yes. I know and I won't speak directly to your situation from the spring, but I know that we made a tablet available to you at the time. The challenge is going to be, Becky, that if you choose it for one of your children, you probably want to choose it for all of your children. We'd have to talk about how many devices are available. So, you know, we'd certainly talk about it and try to suit it to your needs.
Okay. And my second question is about absences. If we are running, like if we are thinking that we're COVID positive, if we have 2 or 3 of those symptoms, do we have to have a doctor's note? Are we going to have an easement of the absences? I mean, this is such a, you know what I mean? It's such a gray area.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. We have not made an official adjustment to the attendance policy yet, but I can tell you that we've talked about some of that. You know, we don't want as many people to feel like they have to power through and get to school. If they're showing that combination of symptoms that I showed earlier, well, the first thing is I'm going to encourage more times that we contact our doctors, at least to discuss them, whether it ends up in a full appointment in there. But I think we're going to have to keep that in mind. And, you know, it's a good question. I would tell you that as of right now, we will be very aware that we have the potential for more absences. But certainly, we want you here if you're able to be here. I'm going to talk about a couple of these chat questions. Oh, go ahead, Becky. I'm sorry.
No, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you.
We got it. A couple of chat questions that came up. The estimated length of time the live videos will be per day. I would tell you that if you're choosing option 2, your child should expect that they will need to access multiple instructional times in the course of the day. If you're talking about a student that's in 2nd grade, maybe they're doing a morning literacy lesson. The teacher might say, hey, you're going to check back in an hour and we'll start a math lesson. And then we'll go do our lunch and our recess break time. And then you'll check back in the afternoon for a writing lesson or whatever it is. It's going to be somewhat different from class to class and from time to time, but I'm going to say that your child should expect to be busy a lot during the day. If they're accessing it at night, because it just works differently in your household as to when things are available, again, they'll be able to watch some of the instruction, and then there's probably going to be some assignments along with it, but they should expect to be busy for a good portion of the day. Sneeze guards. Tabitha, why don't you come on if you can? Do you have sound that you could talk about your question a little bit more?
Yeah, I do.
There you go.
So just pertaining to, like, obviously I know going in the stores and stuff, they have like the plastic coverings. Obviously that's more to protect if somebody sneezes or coughs, that sort of thing. But if they are, I know students may be moving around, but just wondering if there's going to be some sort of guard. Of course, my worry is James, not wanting to keep the mask on all the time. But, if something like that is up, to allow for more, say, mask downtime when, students maybe are just going to the restroom or, whatever, something like that they don't have to constantly be putting it off and on. Again, and that's just a lot of touching your face and all of that stuff too.
Well, and again, if we're washing our hands good, and then the touching the face, if we're not coming in contact with other people, if it's only our own face after our hands are washed, that probably isn't quite as big of a deal. You're right about the idea of the sneeze guard, the idea of the plastic or the plexiglass, right? And that is up in a lot of stores. And, that I've learned a lot about that by asking some questions of different people. And what I found is, as you probably know from working in the retail setting, it's not necessarily a mitigating strategy for the air around you. It's more just to protect from that initial blast of a sneeze or a cough. So I don't know where I would put it in a classroom with 17 kids and a teacher. Now again, we're going to be well spread out in that particular grade because of the size of the classrooms here at Preston. We've got an advantage to that. What does that mean for mask downtime? They're going to have quite a bit of it. They really are. So I don't know that I'm going to be adding a lot of that. Now we are adding some plexiglass sneeze guard type of things for our small, like a reading table. So if a small group or a group comes up and maybe they're still 6 feet apart, but they're sitting together at a small group at a table. I am getting a few guards, stand-up plexi type of things to help in those types of settings. Yes.
Okay.
The question, I'm going to read this out loud. Considering some family members at home are particularly vulnerable, yes. If there's a positive test at Preston, can we transition our children to option 2 at that point for the duration of that period? So I would tell you what I said earlier. We're going to handle any situation that results in a positive test case by case. I would say that if that child, if the person who tests positive is in enough proximity, we can certainly talk about that kind of transition from option 1 to option 2. There are going to be positive cases of COVID. I'm not saying at Preston, I'm just saying that at a school somewhere. There already have been, if you've paid attention to any of the news over the last couple of days, there already have been. So I'm not going to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. It may happen. And when it does, you know, a lot of the guidance that I've read has to do with looking at the amount of positive cases in a setting, the proximity of, you know, relationship between people who test positive, if there's more than one. And then we get into situations where the district has to then decide about, do we shut a classroom down? Do we shut a building down for a stretch of time? So all of that is a very fair question, Steve, and I would tell you that I would not rule out the opportunity to transition if it were to come up. No. Can teachers and/or students wear face shields instead of cloth masks? Like I said to Tabitha's question, what we've learned about face shields is, again, they protect as a shield, but they don't necessarily protect the air around the shield. That's the purpose of the cloth mask, is that it actually stops the droplets from leaving the respiration, the nose, the mouth, whatever it is. That's the whole, my mask protects you, your mask protects me. It doesn't necessarily prevent us from breathing something in, but it keeps what we're breathing out contained. All right. So a face shield, while there is a benefit to it, it is not a full replacement. So I'll take that opportunity to talk about the mask mandate. If in the mask mandate that was given out by the state earlier in July, there was language in there about if a child has a medical condition that prevents them, or a disability that prevents them from wearing a mask, okay, we want to talk about it. We don't necessarily need medical documentation of it, but please know that it's something that we want to at least discuss. So I'll leave it there for now. We can talk more about it case by case if someone has a more individual question for themselves. Christine's question is a very good one. If a student tests positive in the school, how long until the parents are notified? So we have a lot of laws related to medical records and related to medical conditions. And the CDC and the Department of Health and our local health officials have responsibilities for communicating with people who may have been exposed to COVID because they know of a person who's now positive. I actually am not allowed to call everybody up in a classroom and say so-and-so has a positive test. That obviously would not be appropriate. You know, that language, that rule may change, but for now, we will be working with local health officials whose responsibility carries over mine regarding communicating with community and families. Brock's question. Oh, it's not Brock. It's probably the Papos. It's a good question. They're accepting donations of masks and lanyards. I love the idea of a lanyard. When we went camping with my little ones, my little one's only, she's 9, but she wants to ride her bike. She's a girl, so she doesn't have pockets in all her shorts. So we put the mask, clipped it on the lanyard, right? Just a little clip right there, and off she went with it hung around her neck, so she didn't lose it, and worked great. So yeah, by all means, if you have lanyards or masks and want to donate them, that's great. We are getting some masks on site that we'll have in case something breaks or becomes dirty, or if somebody just doesn't have one, by all means, let us know. We'll have some. But yes, if there's donations of things related to that, feel free to reach out. We'll talk it through first. All right. Great questions. All right. Any other questions? If you don't know what they are now, call me over the next few days. I want you to. I'm okay with it. Got a trouble signal on our alarm system, so they're calling me too. Probably should pick that up. Any other questions? I'm flipping through, seeing who's all here.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
Got a question. I had to leave here for a couple of minutes. For testing, as far as letting them stay home and working on the computer, for testing, how will that work?
If you're referring to just like assessments, classroom assessments,
Well,
like if they have a math test,
yeah, exactly. Math test. Let's, God forbid we have to do this for the whole year, as far as going into the 7th grade and stuff like that. The requirements, how are the requirements met, being that they're going to be doing most of their stuff on the laptop?
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I'm thankful that our teachers have done a lot of training in Google Classroom, and they're going to be able to upload a lot of different materials that students can do. In terms of maybe it's a hard paper test or something like that, we're going to have to figure that out. There's going to be different ways that we're going to ask to do that in terms of like a unit test for a math unit. It may be the type of thing where we say, okay, can somebody come up, take something, go home, and then bring it back. For a lot of our assessments that can be translated and transitioned to the online setting, I think we'll be okay for writing assignments, things like that. We're going to be as creative as we can be, but we know that we're going to learn as we go a little bit in some of that too. So I don't know. Now, in terms of things like state testing, if we go the whole year and if state testing occurs, which right now it's on the schedule, then we'll have to come up with a different model for that. We're probably going to have some sort of physical, whether I put desks well spaced out around the gym and everybody just comes in for that time and spaces out in the gym and they come in for the morning, that kind of thing. But in terms of everyday assessments throughout our school year, we're going to do our best to make sure that everybody can access it. Like I said, it's going to have to be some materials that go home at the start and then things that get handed in by somebody dropping them off at the office for our students who are home. That's going to have to be. But it's a good question. It's one that we're still working on.
Yeah, I was one more question. Sorry to bother.
That's okay.
We were having problems with Google Classroom at the beginning of March, April, May, but actually
we had tablets. And they weren't working out with the kinks. So eventually we had to get laptops. But in the meantime, before we got the laptops, we started doing the hard copy. So it's like, for the parents' point of view, the teachers have gotten training, but parents haven't gotten training. A lot of us are clueless with Google Classroom, and then they're not. I'm personally not computer savvy, so it's like it's very frustrating for the parent. Like, is there anything for the parents, to help the child as they're learning that we learn as well? I don't know if I explain myself properly.
No, I think it's an outstanding question, and I appreciate the difficulty that a lot of people went through in the springtime. And I'm going to actually, Scott Miller is our director of technology for the district, and I'm going to put him on the spot just a bit because I know that is something that Scott worked with a lot in the spring, is people calling and trying to work through some of those technical glitches and that technical just ability to be there for your kid, right? So Scott, is there anything that you might lend to that about support for parents?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea to maybe offer, like how we're doing Zoom meetings right now, we could offer some parent Zoom classes just with Google Classroom. I think it would be a wonderful addition to what we were dealing with in the spring, and I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
That will be definitely helpful, because sometimes if you as the parent do not understand it and they're looking to you for guidance, it's very frustrating,
I appreciate that. And like I said, I think, I think there were some videos that were posted to our website in the springtime to help with some of that, but I'm sure that it would be beneficial to run those again and to make those available again. So, you know, the nice thing is that Mr. Miller has joined us tonight to help moderate and host this, but also he's getting feedback that he can write down to make this work better. So here's the best part, folks. You guys are the leading edge. This is the first meeting. All the rest of the buildings in the district are after us. So by the time they get through it, we can say, yeah, we've heard that.
Well, I got to say thank you very much for what you're doing.
All the
And
teachers,
you guys are
everyone.
outstanding. You know what I'm saying? Outstanding.
Mhm.
You know, I know we're going through a difficult time here, but you guys are extremely good. Thank you very much.
We appreciate everything you do for us.
Yes.
Well, yes, and that means the world. It really does. There's not a lot that we can do without everybody's help, and this has been one time where I've said, somebody asked me, what's been something that has touched my heart recently? And the first thing I said was that our school community has worked so well together through this that it's only made us stronger as a school community. And that takes all of us. So I really, really do appreciate that. Jackie's question, your son is going to kindergarten. Do we send in materials with the kids? Don't do anything until we ask for it, Jackie. We'll be asking for things. And like I said, we're going to close down a lot of materials going to and from, but we'll let you know what we need. I know Mrs. Kolsinski is going to be having some sort of orientation for becoming kindergartners. We're just waiting to see what everybody's decisions are about coming to school. So we'll handle that one a little bit closer to the school year after decisions are made. So, any other questions? We have about 5 minutes or so before I'd like to wrap up. So I appreciate it. Don't hesitate to call and reach out. And well, if there's nothing else now, I'll go ahead and close this up and reach out. You'll see that survey come out. You guys have been wonderful. I thank you. I say it all the time. I brag on our parents out here at Preston, and this is why, because we get through it. We work through it, and I really appreciate it. All right? Keep up the good work. I'm going to end the meeting. Mr. Miller, we'll kick off, and I wish you all a good night. We'll be in touch. Thanks again.